So what you'll see in Eclipse, once you've opened it and opened up class, you will see a main pane, which allows us to see the specific code, and you should hopefully have a console. I actually already ran it once, as you can see in the bottom, but the console allows you to see the output of your execution, the running of your code. We'll look at other things as we run things. For instance, we have debugging window, different windows that can be used, importing and things like that, as well as working in team activities, but those we'll ignore for this week. For now, what we are interested in is the pane, which allows us to see the branches, or rather the hierarchy of our project, which is called class, and the SRC folder, which is the source folder that contains the modules that we're interested in, with example being the first module we will look at today. So go ahead and double click on example. You will see the module has a number of comments on it, as well as import statements and methods that we talked about from last week of how you define methods using the def keyword or key, command. You will see that this module is actually executed at the very bottom. If you look at the underscore name equals main, underscore name is actually an inbuilt variable, and it is telling Python when it executes this to look for the main under name, and then when it does that, it references run. So what this basically means is that the main, which is the execution main of the module, is going to be called run. So run is what's going to be executing our code, and run effectively is a controller, and you can see the method right above that if statement is the controller of this module. So it will take an input value, it will then select a random set of numbers, or results rather, and data from a file, and then print those results to a given file. So all this module does is basically load data from another file. So there's a file called nameEntityMerged.csv, which has 54,000 data points. And from that, I want to select a given random number of data points. Now, how many do I select? Well, that's given by the argument that you give it. So you'll see that this takes a system argument dot. So system argument is basically an input that you are giving it as a user. In this case, during the runtime, it will look for a system argument. So it's sys.argv. This is an inbuilt kind of variable in the system. So system is inbuilt, of course, in Python. And how do you do this? So how do you input the value? So if you go to run configurations, well, actually the first thing you should do is right-click on the module, and you can go run as Python1 just to see what happens. And you will see it should not work. And you'll get that error as you had seen earlier. Okay. Now let's go look at this specific module and see how to correct this. So if we go to right-click and go to run ... you will see that we have a pane which allows us to do something called run configurations. And if we go to Python run, we'll see there are run configurations there, which we can then modify. So class example.py is the one that we did. Whoops, I actually ran it accidentally. So let's go back to run configurations. So example.py. So you can see here the run configuration should be basically referencing the class and also example.py module. So if you click on arguments, we want to give it an argument of an input. So here we put what's called a program argument, and that will be our sys.argv input that was throwing an error earlier. So if I put 500, for instance, this time it should read 500 as that second actually value from that given container. So you see sys.argv1 a reference, and so it's going to look for a value basically, and that value should be that 500. So if we press apply and then we run, this time we should get a result, and you can see that we have it's run the random results. We get the number of overall outputs that are there, and it's finished. And then what it should do is hopefully produce a kind of output for us, and hopefully we'll be able to see it. And so you can see the output actually in the SRC folder. I've put some output, of course, in the output folder. You can move around where you want the output to go, of course. That's something you can do later. But for now, let's go see if there's an output, what that looks like. So you can see this is the actual output, hopefully opening up. And there it is. So this is some of the 500 selected, hopefully 500 selected outputs that we have chosen from the given inputs that we had given it earlier. So the 500. So there they are. Okay. So now the next part will be, of course, discussing the code and how this result was obtained.